training aspect, teaching and demonstrating the various skills. On Tuesday and Thursday, we do takedowns and takedown defense. On Friday, we do mostly pins, and on Saturday, we do mostly counters to various movements and various grips. And today's film is going to relate to the Monday skills that we teach. And the first set of skills that we'll go over will be slip moves. But before we start into the actual teaching of our various escapes reversals, we tend to go over the general aspects of trying to get out from under. And I'm going to refer to this here for 9 items that relate to escaping and reversing. They're general items. Number 1, should have an idea as a bottom man, should develop a plan for escape reversal. Through practice, become sufficiently versatile so you'll be always able to find a way. Number 2, at the whistle, recoil and be ready to attack. Though bottom is called the defense position, aggressive. It is not best for most to act the part of a passive counter wrestle. Number 3, beyond the initial movement, do not be too predictable. Either subtly set some move or moves up, or put together fast sequences. Tend to keep your opponent wondering as to what might be coming at him next. Do not stay with any one move too long, as a general rule. Number 4, believe. Believe that however long it will take you to get out, it's only a matter of time and a matter of figuring out how the opponent wants to have it done to him. It helps to be thoroughly practiced against strong, determined, and able opposition. Number 5, keep your head up. Stay proud. The level at which your head is kept is about as good a predictor about outcome as there be. Number 6, don't get broken down. Not to your hip, not to your stomach. In no way allow yourself to get put on your back. Number 7, getting tied up precludes escaping. Therefore, don't get tied up. Particularly, keep your wrists free. And also, of course, try to keep your legs free. Stay out of leg hook and leg grapevine. Number 8, regarding escapes and reversals, get the point or points. Almost out is not out. Almost on top is not on top. Though close may count for 1 point on a reversal attempt, close doesn't count at all on an escape try. And finally, number 9, don't overly relax or get overly anxious when you succeed in gaining an escape or reversal. Stay ever alert and keep wrestling. Any point or point scored does not mean that you should stop, nor does it mean that your opponent will stop. Be particularly alert and ready when you have just come apart from your opponent to a neutral facing position. Among our Monday drills, among the slip moves on Monday that we show, the first item is a craw move. And we're going to do it from several positions or against several attempts at grips by the opponent. If we're in sit-out and our opponent happens to drape an arm over our shoulder, which is a mistake on his part, but yet he might do it, we do what we call craw action. It's like making a bicep, wrapping under his upper arm, our opponent's upper arm, and then we go down toward our shoulder, and come out the side, rear door, and then go in behind and hook a leg. Use our heel to hook an instep. Again, from a different angle, that same craw move. If you're in a sit and the opponent drapes his arm over your shoulder, you can underhook his arm like you're making a bicep. You go to your shoulder, not your elbow. You work your head out, and as you come out, you look to go behind and get your 2 points reversal. The second opportunity for craw, from a sit-out, if your opponent double underhooks you, and if you can reach up and get a set of fingers with one hand, pull that set down and get his wrist, you can hold on to that wrist and do what we call power craw move. Power craw because you have the wrist as well. It's the same action as earlier. Go to your shoulder, work your way out, look to go behind by hooking a leg and get your control points. Second time, facing this way in sit-out position, he's got a double underhook. You get his fingers, pull them down, get his wrist, get your craw grip, sit out. He comes around to the side, grabs your chin, and is going to pull you down toward your back. You go with him and go hard into crawl action. You force him by you, and you slip him behind you. One more time. You're in a sit position, and the man comes around to the side and gets chin and loose grip, and he's going to try to pull you down to your back. You go with him and rotate and forcefully execute the crawl and get your 2 points reversal. A fourth opportunity for crawl is if an opponent very mistakenly attempts a cradle from the rear. You are in position to execute a crawl to counter that cradle. He'll go down, work his way out, and in behind. So a man that applies a cradle, gets a sit out, does it from the rear, has made a mistake, and crawl action will make sure that he realizes it is a mistake. And if he applies a cradle to you when you're on your knees, if you can get into a sit position and get your body perfectly erect, perpendicular to the mat, you can then execute a crawl. One more time, facing this way. You're in a kneeling position. He puts a cradle on. You get into a sit position. You sit versus the cradle, and then execute crawl action. And as a last showing of crawl action, we do it against a split scissors. And this is what we call a leg crawl. We're going to do crawl action, but it won't be on an arm, it'll be on a leg. We get to our butt, we cross foot grab and grab our own wrist and put our elbow into the opponent's calf and create some pain so it loosens his grip. Then we dip our hips down and do a crawl action on the leg. One more time. Opponent gets up into a split scissors position. You get to your butt, do a cross foot grab, grab your own wrist, apply elbow pressure to his calf, dip your hips away a little bit so you can slip out the back door more easily, and do crawl action on the leg and come out the back door. The second slip move that we're going to show is what we call an inside drag, or inside drag bypass action. One time that you can do it is against a leg hook grip by the top man and a loop of the arm. If he loops the arm and hooks the leg, he's vulnerable to an inside drag. And all the bottom man is going to do is sit through to the inside toward me and get a drag grip and switch hips. And then he gets into what we call drag bypass position. One instep is behind the knee, the other leg covers the opponent's leg, and one arm is wrapped around the hamstring, and the other hand is in drag position still. And to finalize, to complete the reversal, we drive the opponent toward his head so he can't do high leg over action of any sort, and then we come out and get a leg hook ride. That's the way it winds up. From a different angle, the man has leg hook and he's got the near arm loop. Sit through to the inside, do drag action, get hamstring, you've got the drag grip, and you drive him toward his head, and then work your way out into leg hook ride. From a third angle, facing away from me, the inside drag begins, sit through, and you can see the foot placement now, an instep behind the knee to prevent high leg over. There's an attempted high leg over and it's blocked. The other leg covers the near leg so that the bottom man, the man that has just been reversed, can't step across. And then so he can't back up and get an arm through between bodies. You drive him toward his head and work your way out from underneath completely and get leg hook ride. Another opportunity for inside drag is if an opponent is looking to get a tight bar, and he has just applied the tight bar grip, but he doesn't have anything to go with it. Hasn't tied up a wrist on the other side, hasn't tied up that other arm. You can sit through to the inside, right from your stomach, switch hips, and get into drag bypass position. Driving forward, work your way out and come up. And the last time we'll do it, we'll face away. Man has a tight bar grip, and he's straddling this near leg. He's not off to the side. Very vulnerable to the inside drag. Through, get your feet in proper position, work your way out, driving him toward his head so you can slip a leg out and come up in leg hook ride. Our third slip move in this teaching of slip moves will be slip and a half Nelson. And it's been very good to us through the years because opponents will apply half Nelson if you have any skill at executing a counter move to it, such as slip and a half, you can get some points. The first position from which we'll do it is from a prone position. If we're down on our stomach and the opponent has a half Nelson in, and he's off to this side, he's not covering a leg, we would not attempt slip and a half. We would only put ourselves on our back. But if he's covering our leg, straddling at least that one leg, we bring our heel up in the air to block him from stepping off that leg, and then we begin slip and a half. It's a lot like the inside drag slip move. You grab the upper arm, you slide your knee through, switch hips, go for a hand with your feet, legs in bypass position, drive the opponent toward his head, and work your way out into a bulldog leg hook ride. Again, facing away from me. If the opponent is already off to the side, we wouldn't attempt this. But if he's straddling a leg, we bring our heel up in the air so he can't get off our leg readily. We start to grab his upper arm, slide our knee through to the inside, switch hips, get our legs in bypass position, get a deep grip on the hamstring, drive him toward his head, work our way out into bulldog ride. The second opportunity for a slip and a half, though we never care to be broken down to our hip, if a man gets what we call reach around wrist grip, and he brings us down to our hip, what we can do is cover his legs so he can't jump to the other side, and then put a half Nelson in for him. It's not he that's putting it in, we're putting his half in for him by grabbing his upper arm and bringing it up over our head. And then we proceed to switch hips, go for the hamstring, unhook the leg, and hip hoist the base. Again. The man's got to reach around wrist grip. He breaks us down to our hip. We grab his upper arm. After covering his leg, we put his half Nelson in for him. And then we switch hips, get the hamstring, unhook the leg, and hip hoist out the base. A third opportunity. If the opponent has us down on the other hip, or on the hip where he's putting a half Nelson in, if he hasn't uncovered our legs and we're able to get a heel up over his leg behind his knee, we'll then slip our other free leg through, get the heel behind his knee, and then switch hips. Sit up so he can't back up and get an arm across body, and then drive him toward his head and work our way out. One more time. If the opponent has us down on our far hip, and he's applying half Nelson, but he hasn't cleared our legs, and we're able to get a heel up behind his knee, that blocks him from coming perpendicular. We'll slide our bottom knee through so we can get our heel behind his other knee. We now have him blocked off. He cannot come around perpendicular. We switch hips, sit up so we get a good hamstring grip, drive him toward his head, and come out in a leg hook ride. Another opportunity for slip and a half is if the opponent has a half Nelson in and we stand up. If we stand up while he has a half Nelson in, we can grab the upper arm, do a little bit of duck under action, and just slip the half, come in behind. You get 2 points immediately upon reaching this position. As a final item, in terms of opportunity to work a slip and a half, if you're the bottom man and you've reached in and gotten wrist, and the top man does counter wrist grip, the bottom man can do a far roll, And as a completion to the far roll, he can do a slip of the half. So the bottom man has a wrist grip. The top man has reached into counter wrist grip. The bottom man starts into far roll action. And right at this point, he puts the half Nelson in. He grabs the upper arm, puts the half Nelson in, doesn't hip hoist, and he now has position to go after a pin on his opponent. He's got a half Nelson. All he has to do is get perpendicular. One more time from a different angle. Bottom man has wrist grip. Top man reaches underneath and gets a counter wrist grip. The counter to the counter wrist grip is far roll to slip of the half. You grab the upper arm, put the man's half Nelson in, hip hoist, and go right after a pin. If ever an opponent has wrist bar in half, we would tend not to attempt to slip of the half because we're liable to put ourselves on our back. However, if you're the bottom man and you're good at slip of the half and you're confident that you can free your wrist as you come underneath to do the slip action, or if you're desperate, you've got to find a way out, you've got to take chances to perhaps get those points you need, then you do slip of the half against a wrist bar and half. Here we'll attempt it. Man on the bottom is in wrist bar and half, and he's going to slip it to the inside. Going to grab the upper arm, slip the leg through, and he's going to thrust his arm out to break his grip on the wrist, and then complete the slip of the half. One more time from a different angle. Your opponent has a far one-on-one and a near side half, and your leg is in position where you can stop him from coming perpendicular. Slow him down. Slip inside, and then thrust your arm to the outside to break his grip on your wrist, and then complete the slip of the half action, come up on top and get control. All right, the next item on our list of Monday moves is stand-up and the combinations from stand-up. And on our stand-up, what we try to do is face our fingers in a little bit to cock our arms. And we have our outside set of toes curled up a little bit because we're going to pivot weight onto that outside foot. And our inside foot, the instep, is flush against the mat because we're going to slide that across as we step our inside foot to the spot where our outside hand currently is. And when we set up, we try to get our hands as close to our knees as we legally can. And then on the ref's whistle, we would explode upward. Our back at initial point is at a 45-degree angle with the mat, and we're going to try to get our head up, pushing off with our hands, exploding upward, and sliding inside foot to outside hand. All right? Begin. Down. Same position. Same move. You push off. Go for the wrist, slip that inside foot, move to the outside hand spot, and we pivot weight onto the right foot with a little bit of an exaggerated motion to get extra weight on that foot in case the opponent was going for far ankle on a whistle. All right, we'll face a different direction. We'll face toward me. You have the outside set of toes curled. The inside set is flush against the mat. Hands are turned inward a little bit to cock the arms. There's going to be that initial push off, thrusting the head up and the hips toward the front. And as we come part way up, we're grabbing for wrist, and we're getting our forearm even with our thigh, palm up, elbow close to our own ribs. So here we come up into the stand-up. We pivot weight onto that outside foot. One more time, facing the same direction. Push off with our hands, bring our inside foot to that outside hand spot, and then shift weight in an exaggerated manner to the outside foot, just in case the opponent happened to have gone down for a far ankle ride. We prevent him from lifting our foot. Now, once we're up, there are lots of things we can do. Some of the simplest things is if the opponent happens to have wrist, back, and waist, we can do what we call a single peel. We just get this full set of fingers to make it legal, We peel those fingers off our waist, take a step forward, and do a vertical hip hoist action. Get a neutral, get down low and ready in case the opponent's not willing to concede the neutral. If he has a double wrap but hasn't actually gotten a body lock, and we can get both sets of fingers, sometimes does occur, then we'll do a double rip. You step out, do a vertical hip hoist, get in a ready position in case he's attacking. More commonly, we do what we call Oki 2-on-1. If he gets a body lock, and we can work on the one wrist, drop our hips down vertically and pop them to the front, putting his wrist down by our hip. We walk our feet away a little bit and do a cut through, a vertical hip through, a hip thrust, hip hoist, I should say, vertical hip hoist. All right, one more time, Oki 2-on-1. You get two hands on the one wrist, and then put that wrist down by your hip, and then you walk your feet out a little bit and do a cut through. Another opportunity for Oki 2-on-1 is if the opponent has reached in somehow and he's gotten counter wrist grip on us. We have his wrist, but he reached in and got ours. We let go of his wrist, thrust our hand across our body, get his wrist with our free hand, roll against the thumb, get an Oki 2-on-1, and work it to the opposite side. One more time. He has a counter wrist grip. We let go of the wrist that we have, thrust the arm across, get his wrist with our free hand, roll against his thumb so we can get two hands on the one wrist, and then do our cut through. Another opportunity for Oki 2-on-1 is if on a stand-up you happen to do a type of movement where you bring your hand across to slap your back and reach up inside and get his wrist with your free hand. You can then apply what is called by us Oki 2-on-1 variation. So the man on top has waist and arm, and you're reaching across to slap your own back. You reach in and get his wrist, and then get his fingers, and then with your wrist grip released, you do an Oki 2-on-1 by pushing on the fingers down toward your hip and do a cut through. One more time. He has waist and arm, and you've reached across as if to slap your back. It's a special technique. You free your arm, you get his wrist, then get his fingers, and then instead of having two hands on the one wrist, you've got two hands around or near his set of fingers, push down toward your hip, and do a cut through to get a neutral. It can also happen while you're doing a basic Oki 2-on-1 that you'd like to do a cut through, but he's so tight to you, and his head's down low, and he's in such a position that you can't cut through. That's when we say to do a whirl over. You're going to whirl your arm up over the top and sprawl your leg back. His head's in the way, you wouldn't be able to cut through. Come over the top, pivot to face him, sprawl your leg back. Face him a little more, chin on neck. One more time, face in the same direction. You got Oki 2-on-1, and you'd like to do a cut through, but his head is in the way. What you do is instead a whirl over. You just drop in a whizzer in, sprawling your leg back to make sure that he doesn't get in on leg and take you down. So those are some of the hand control movements that you can use, as some of the other moves that you might want to use. If you're doing hand control, for example, Oki 2-on-1, and it's not effective, he may have a grip where his top hand is the one you're trying to do the Oki 2-on-1 on, when you really want to be doing it on the bottom hand, and you just realize your Oki 2-on-1 isn't going to work. What you can do is a change off, and the change off we would select would be a nosedive switch. So we're going to do an Oki 2-on-1 here. We're attempting it, but he's tough. We dropped our hips, we tried to pop our hips, we just aren't able to break the grip. We do a change off. We just nosedive, plant our hand, reach for our handkerchief, and do a switch action. And then work our way in behind, get 2 points. One more time. Face same direction. You have an Oki 2-on-1, and it's ineffective. You're not able to break the man's grip despite fine effort, good effort. Then what you can do is a change-up. You forget about the Oki 2-on-1 and just bow down, plant your hand, reach for your handkerchief, slip a leg through, sit through to the outside, that is, get in a parallel position to your opponent, and come out with switch action. Another move against the top man who has body locked on us is cross wrist roll. If he has a body lock and we're trying to work on his hands and he's driving us forward, we can change off to a cross wrist roll. We reach across our body, get his wrist, and we're going to drag a foot to trip him, and we're going to unlock our hips by making sure our toes are turned so that our hips will rotate easily. If your toes are pointing straight ahead or to the wrong side, your hips are hard to rotate. But if you turn your toes a little bit, you can rotate your hips and do cross wrist roll action. Okay, one more time. If the man behind us has the body lock and we're attempting to work on Oki 2-on-1 and he's driving into us, maybe you're going to try to drive us outside the circle, we do a change-up. We do cross wrist roll. Reach across, grab the wrist, and start into the roll action. If the man that has the body lock figures that it's time for him to change off, he may release his body lock and attempt a double leg tackle from the rear before you can effectively execute the Oki 2-on-1. Before he gets a grip on your leg, you have to sit and slide. Walk your feet out to the front, slide off them, rotate, face them, get a neutral point. One more time. If the man behind releases up top and is going to tackle you from the rear, you anticipate that move, sit away, slide off them, and rotate and get the neutral. Another move from the stand-up to go with all those moves that we've already shown would be what's called farmer's roll. And it's simply a standing wrist leg roll. What you do is perhaps reach back and tap at the man's hip to get him to move away, to create an opening that you can step back through. And you step back through a little bit, get wrist, and start to reach for his leg as you go down toward one knee to start the far roll. It's a far roll action where you have a wrist and you have a leg. And it ends up in what we call Granby pin grip, where you're in a perpendicular position. One more time. Face a different direction this time. Face over this way. Man has a body lock. He doesn't necessarily have to have a body lock. He could have waist and arm. And what you're going to do is reach back and tap to the hip to get him to move away to create an opening so you can step back through, get the wrist, and then do a far roll action. And you'll end up in what's called a Granby pin position. And to finalize the stand-up process, we'll go back through the steps involved in the stand-up itself. Again, we always say that stand-up should be the first thought, and it should be the last thought. For most people, stand-up's where it's at in terms of getting out. And for people that like other things, if those other things don't work, they're ineffective against a given opponent, then you want to think about standing up. So we're going to do the stand-up in slow-mo here to see if we can't go through the small details. Number one, you want to have your back roughly at about a 45-degree angle with the mat. You want to have your fingers pointing toward one another a little bit, cock your arms a little bit. You want to curl your outside set of toes slightly, whereas your inside set is flush against the mat. You want your hands fairly close to your body, as close as they can be legally, and you don't want too much weight on your hands. You're going to explode upward, using the cocked arms to push. You're going to bring inside foot to outside hand spot where it was, and you want forearm parallel to your thigh, elbow close to ribs, palm up. You're going to grab for the wrist when you get part way, and you're going to pivot weight onto the outside foot in an exaggerated manner and push back into your opponent. One more time. As he brings his foot through to the outside, goes for the wrist, has forearm parallel to his thigh, palm up, going to pivot weight onto the outside foot and push back into the opponent to imbalance him slightly. Now once you're up like this, you want to keep from standing too tall. If you stand too tall, your opponent can lift you. Let him have a body lock. If the opponent attempts to lift you, you entwine a leg so you can't lift. Sometimes people will entwine both legs to the inside so that the opponent can't lift. You don't want to get lifted and slammed in this sport. You also don't want to get tripped down to the side. You want to avoid leg trips to the side. So always keep the leg on the side where your opponent's head is a little further to the front. Always keep that foot out a little further to the front for safety purposes. The worry in standing up is that you'll get lifted and slammed and get injured, or that somebody will hang on you or side trip you and create an injury. You try to make sure those things don't happen by standing properly, quickly, all the way in one shot. We never stand part way. If you stand up part way and stop, that's when you can get caught in cradles. Stand up is an explosive move. It's only for people who have explosiveness. Those are the kinds of people that should be working stand up as a primary move.
3, 2, this is on record. I go.
All right, we're going to show Swisher and some of the combinations of what we call a Swisher movement. Whereas on stand-up, we had a little weight on our hands and we pushed off the mat and exploded upward right away. On Swisher, we leave weight on our hands. We add extra weight to our hands, get our butt up first rather than our head. And we bring inside foot to outside hand and then swivel our hips underneath us and get in a stand-up position, actually, but it's a very low stand-up position. It's exceptionally low. So we butt up, weight is on our hands, and we're going to bring inside foot toward outside hand as we did earlier. And we're going to swivel our hips and push back into our opponent to use him for balance purposes. And once we're up, there's a combination of moves that we'll be able to use. Well, we're going to do the stand-up itself, the Swisher stand-up itself. It's sort of a cross between a sit position and a stand-up position. We'll do that again. We're going to put added weight to our hands. We're going to butt up, get in a bear position, step inside foot to outside hand spot, and then swivel our hips, and then keep our butt low. If the opponent happens to give us chop action to the side, then we would go into Granby. We would use the momentum he's creating to Granby action. If when we're in a Swisher position, and our opponent happens to pull us back toward him, then we go into high turn. Post elbow, then head, bring the leg over, walk our feet away. If he chases, we do wrist leg roll action. And get him in Granby pin. Okay. And if our opponent happens to drive into us, if he happens to not drive into us in the sense of trying to drive down low, but drive us upward, then we do Oki 2-on-1. If he drives forward, once we're up, if he drives forward, we do Oki 2-on-1 and our basic cut through and get neutral. And those are about the only three directions the opponent can take us. With a waist strap and arm, it's hard for him to force us to the outside. He can either bring us to the inside where we do Granby, or pull us back toward him where we do high turn in, or drive us forward away from himself where we can do an open 2-on-1. So we'll do that set one more time. We put added weight to our hands, we butt up, bring inside foot across, swivel our hips so we get stable. If the opponent tries to crunch us to the side, we go with and do a Granby roll. outside, get up. If he draws us back into him, before we fall, we rotate, post elbow, then head, bring leg over. If he chases as we run our feet away, we get wrist leg roll, take him over into a pin grip. If the opponent, upon our doing a swisher action, drives us up, forward, away from himself, then we'll just do Oki 2-on-1 and get ourselves in it. If he were to happen to dive in there and try to leg tackle us from the rear as he's driving forward, we would sit and slide as was demonstrated earlier.
Go ahead.
I've got to put a count on how many.
We're going to do switch action and switch combination, various combinations you can do off switch action, depending upon what the opponent attempts as we're attempting to switch. But first we'll demonstrate switch. In order to execute a switch, you have to free your arm. If the top man has control of your near arm, you have to free it somewhat. One simple way to do it is bring hand across, palm up, and then turn palm down. When you bring it across very hard, it's hard for the man on top to control the arm, keep his grip. And then you're going to start bringing your leg through with a sit-through action to the outside and reach for your handkerchief so you get a hold of his leg. There is no switch if you don't have a grip on him. Stay parallel to him. Keep your foot in the air, knee bent. The purpose of foot in the air, knee bent is to prevent step across, so your opponent can't counter move you with a step over. And then you shimmy away and lean back into his shoulder area a little bit. And as you come up behind, you thrust your arm up through the rear crotch, and then come in behind him, and then come up and get wasted on. Again, from a different angle. If your opponent has control of your near arm, you have to free it. So we're going to bring hand across, palm up, then turn palm down. We're going to start reaching for our handkerchief as we do a sit-through action to the outside. We want to rotate fully so that we're not on our butt, not on the other hip, wrong hip. We have foot in the air, knee bent to prevent a step over. We're parallel to our opponent, not perpendicular, parallel to him. We're going to shimmy our hips away a little bit, leaning into his shoulder to put pressure on him. And out of fear of a step over, a late step over, we're going to bring arm up through the crotch, and we have our leg raised in the air a little bit to prevent the step over. Once you gain control, you can move up top and get wasted on. One more time from the very same angle. This time, to free our arm, what we're going to do is not bring hand across, palm up. We're going to have the top man loop our arm a little bit, and we're going to do a limp arm. We're going to loosen our arm, and then put our hand to the outside where we can't easily get our arm again. And we're going to start reaching for the handkerchief, and then sit through to the outside. And as we start to come in behind him, we bring our other leg in the air a little bit to stop a step over, and we bring our arm up through the crotch to prevent step over, and we get the reversal. Now, some of the combinations of switch. The opponent will not want to get switched, and he's going to do some different things, or perhaps do some different things that we have to react against. If he crowds us in a lateral sense, starts moving sideways into us, making it tough for us to get to our proper hip and get a good switch grip, he's crowding into us, then we'll come back and hit far roll. Hit boys, get him in the pin grip. One more time, different angle. If as we go for the switch, our opponent starts crowding us laterally, won't let us get out into a good switch grip position, then we forget about switch. We come back, go with the action, and do far roll in reverse. A second possibility is what is called switch to whizzer or one-point switch. If you go for a switch and the opponent stretches the target leg, he won't let you get a grip on his leg, what you do is you verticalize your hips and then you roll your arm up over his back and then do a hip hoist to get a neutral position. Chin on neck, near facing position will get you a single point neutral. One more time from a different angle. You go for a switch and the opponent stretches hips in the air, you lean toward his butt, not toward his neck, but toward his butt, and you bring your arm up over the top, do hip hoist action, and it will get you neutral. A third combination off switch. If you go for a switch, and for the fact of the opponent's poor balance, or his attempt to sit under for a re-switch, begin a re-switch, he falls to his hip, he can change to the reverse cradle. So we go for a switch, he falls, poor balance. What we do is immediately take advantage of this opportunity by coming up over the top with our arm, going after the top knee, and we get a cradle grip on him, which we call RC, or reverse cradle. Very potent pin grip. One more time, different angle. We're going for a switch. As we hit it, the opponent loses his balance or starts to sit under in an attempted re-switch. We forget about switch. We change off to RC. Hip hoist the knees, get our base, get the cradle on tight, put him on his back. Another opportunity for a combo off switch is if we go for a switch, and though we freed our arm, our opponent doesn't want us to keep it free, so he comes back in there and gets our arm and starts to chop us, bring us back down to our hip, prevent the switch. We do an elevator. Hip hoist and get a neutral. He gets up there to chop. We forget about the switch. It's no longer going to be effective. We don't even reach for it anymore. We grab his upper arm, get instep against his knee from the inside, do elevator action as we lower our upper body. Our lower body raises his leg up. We come over top for overhook position, and then hip hoist and face and get a neutral. One more time from a different angle. We go for the switch. The opponent comes up and grabs our upper arm and starts to chop us down to our hip. We go with his action. Grab his upper arm, go to our back, elevate his leg, overhook his arm, plant our hand, and hip hoist to the front and get neutral. Get a one-point play. Another combination, we go for a switch, and our opponent executes a re-switch. We go for the switch, and he sits under and begins a re-switch. We go with it. We go to our shoulder, hooking his arm, and do step-over action. It's a near roll type action to counter the counter. One more time. You go for a switch, and your opponent sits under and attempts a re-switch. Start again. Delay the re-switch. Okay, let him get the switch in. Goes for a switch, and then the opponent decides at the last moment, as you're starting to come up onto him, now the man that's being switched does re-switch. You go with it, go to your shoulder, and then step back across and counter his counter. Posting your knee near your head up so you can't come back in. And then finally, if the opponent circles away from our switch, we can do dip and turn. So sit out and turn. If he circles away, just forget about switch, dip our hips away, turn on our shoulder, and get a neutral. One more time, facing a different direction. We go for a switch, and the opponent circles away. Unhook. Circles away from us, we do dip and turn, and get a one-point neutral. So switch has several combinations. It's an old move, an effective move, and there's a lot of things you can work off it if the switch itself won't bring you points. Thus far on the Monday Skills film, what we've talked about are a bunch of escapes, slip moves, stand-up, combinations from stand-up, swisher-type stand-up, and combinations from swisher, and also our basic switch with some combinations from that switch. And now we're going to enter into the realm of riding, talk a little bit about some rides. And before we get into actual rides, individual types of rides, we'll talk in general as to what the man on top will think about. There are perhaps a dozen things according to the list I'm going to refer to that a man on top would have considered when he's on top. Number one, be an aggressive rider. Put your opponent on defense right from the start. Number two, in general, while riding, stay behind your opponent's arms, particularly when he sits out. Stay behind his arms. Don't drape a hand over top the shoulder. Number three, as you ride, keep your balance foremost in mind. Tend not to tilt your hips as you move around them, and when kneeling, keep your knees spread wide apart to both lower your center of gravity and set your braces in the form of a large angle for more definite support. Number four, tend to ride heavy. That is, make your opponent bear your weight, but not too high. That is, too far up toward his head or simply overextended in relation to his body. Number five, when legs are not involved in controlling opponent, keep your own legs free. You cannot expect to much control your opponent if you do not first have much control of yourself. So you keep your legs free. Number six, to establish or increase leverage over your opponent, gain hand control, that is, wrist control, where you can. Number seven, strictly riding, trying only to stay on top is not the name of the game. The name of the game is pin, not win. Have confidence that you can turn them and be aggressive in your effort to turn your opponent over. Number eight, if you break opponent down to his stomach or hip, use your hands to control your opponent's wrists and or arms. Wrist bars or tight bars, for example. And use your feet to prevent his legs from restricting your mobility so you can move from side to side. Shrewd use of your hands should help you to keep him prone, and shrewd use of your feet can enable you to clear the way when you want to step around a bit relative to your opponent's body. Number nine, do not let opponent get to a facing position. But if he does get there, despite your best efforts to stay toward his rear, do not stop wrestling. Be active and be smart. Number 10, if the reversal is seemingly inevitable, rather than resist tenaciously and thereby not only get reversed but tied up or worse, it may be wise to concede the reversal, or perhaps better yet, try to give opponent 1 point, give him a neutral instead of 2. It's decision time. Also, again, realize that clinging eats up the clock, and you must consider giving yourself enough time to get a point or points back in that period. Number 11, if ever you get reversed, don't stop wrestling. If you stop, you'll probably score more. As a result of a reversal, all is not lost, unless you think so. Never let that thought enter your mind. Have your head up and keep on competing. Have no regrets. And finally, number 12, aside from aggression and balance, which are somewhat ingrained, all else that superior riding ability entails can be much developed, and even aggression and balance can be somewhat developed. Be aware that what you most must want to develop, since it is the key to riding, is your knowledge of position and moves. Know your opponent's possible moves when you have them in a given position or ride, and then be able to block and or counter those moves. Further, learn to program ahead with precise imagination and get discipline and decisiveness to become part of the overall fine blend. Lastly, avoid the foolish and the illegal. For example, don't lock hands illegally. Even overlapping hands is considered to be locking hands. The first type of ride that we're going to speak about is ankle ride. And we'll just show a couple of different ways that you can be aggressive from the top using an ankle ride to break a man down, prevent him from moving out from under and getting a neutral or reversal. First one we'll do is far ankle and near arm loop. Now, ankle grab is actually a misnomer. It's the instep, the laces that you're grabbing for. There's more leverage there with that sort of grip than there would be with an ankle grab. So we go for the laces, and we loop the near arm, and we pick that foot up, pull it across the opponent's butt, and drive him forward, using our upper body to press into him. So So far ankle and near arm loop is a possibility. More common would be far ankle and waist strap. Go for the far ankle, that is the far set of laces, and go for the waist. And again, you use your upper body to bump them aggressively. Pick that ankle up, foot up, and pull it across his butt a little bit and drive forward and try to break them down. And a third method here would be near ankle. A lot of people prefer to go for the near ankle, the inside ankle on the whistle. And on that, we shift behind the man a little bit, keep our head up on top where we can't get hit with an elbow if the man is coming back with his arm some way. And we pick up on the laces, and again, using the upper body, we drive forward and break them down to the front. We tend to use ankle rides against opponents who stand up. We don't have a better means of stopping a stand up. And against people who tend to use rolls. It's hard to roll against the person who rides ankles. And wherever we think it's a necessary or wise change-off, we'll go to ankle rides. If you're going to grab the ankle at the whistle, you try to conceal your intent. Don't overtly take a look as to where the target foot or instep happens to be. It's always where it ought to be, and you just have to realize you've got to go down there and get it quickly before the opponent makes a quick move from the bottom. Once the target foot is in hand, be aggressive. Press into the opponent with your upper body. Pick his foot up off the mat a bit, and particularly drive as you pick up. If an opponent is attempting to pivot weight onto the foot that's in your hand, you most particularly have to drive so that you can pick that foot up. Upon lifting the instep and driving, you continue to pressure by pulling the foot diagonally across the butt as we just showed. If you need a pin, realize that ankle rides do not pin. And the name of the game is pin, not win. And so we don't use ankle rides other than for control, breakdown, to get better leverage for turning a man to his back.
Take care of ankle ride, I think. Now, cross body, upper body, that's going to take some reading. Great. And this is where I think you're going to be doing it as I said, so you're ready to do that right now.
And we're going to stay in between these two lines.
Yeah, that's a good spot.
Okay.
Good spot.
The first part is going to be general. All right, beyond ankle rides, which we've just spoken of, now we're going to talk a little bit about leg grapevine and cross-body ride position. Some general comments first before we actually demonstrate. In order to be the complete wrestler, the person has to become very adept with his feet and legs. But for the most part, that part of wrestling is best placed last on the list of development priorities. The reason in my mind is that using boots is a risky business. 80% of the time when a person gets reversed out of boots, it will be to his own back. Since beginners can find enough ways to get to their backs without boots use, practically sending them there, unless the system is built on boots use, it's generally best to leave the use of boots, grapevine in particular, to the more experienced. Whether by chance or necessity or design, rape insertion becomes a fact sometimes in anybody's scene, and so you have to be knowledgeable of the basics, the counters, and the combos, and that we try to become. And we'll try to put some of those basics on film right now. When inserting a grapevine versus a kneeling opponent, if the near leg is being inserted, before doing so, place your forward hand in rudder position behind opponent's near arm and apply enough pressure that he would not be able to reach back with his arm and block or catch your leg as it makes its entry for the grape. Also, to make his reaching back less likely, to foster your own balance as your foot enters, press into or onto opponent with your upper body. Doing so will force weight onto his hands and should enable you to balance yourself via his body and your free foot acting as supports. If opponent does manage to reach back around and grab your leg from the outside, might sit on his arm to trap it, and then apply what we call Bauline's liftover, followed up by inverted reverse headlock. If opponent happens to grab your leg from the inside, that is from the front crotch, you might figure for his arm, push his head down and away, and insert a far side half Nelson as a lead up to fully securing what's called a crucifix. This is crucifix pin. To help in getting a near grape in cleanly, that is without difficulty, you can perhaps go to a hover position, that is move your body up onto your opponent, and pick up on his far ankle as a distraction. If or when your opponent stretches his far leg and reaches back to secure wrist control, let that be your cue to insert a near grape. He can't stop it because he has a lot of weight on his inside hand. If ever you're having trouble inserting a near grape, or if caring to avoid possible trouble in an attempt, consider inserting the grape on the far side of opponent, where he is perhaps less likely to be expecting or resisting. Just come over the top with your foot, slip it in. And to facilitate the grape insertion, always remember that near or far, aim your heel toward opponent's groin area. Insert the heel swiftly and smoothly. Don't let the foot touch the mat. Once the grape is secured, you seek to anchor yourself entirely. Place a 3 foot around to your own rear to brace versus possible inside fold. And also be ready to set a trail hand out and wheel free knee around to far side to act as braces in the event of an outside leg fold. And always tend to keep your hips up on top. That's a general rule in grapevine riding. You try to keep your hips higher than your opponent's hips. One more time, we will insert a far grape, come up over the top, bring the heel in near the groin, and get into a cross-body ride position. And once the boot is in, you try to get your hips up onto opponent so that he won't fall off, and you rotate your hips toward a parallel relationship with the mat to tighten your attachment to the opponent. The controlling of the opponent is mostly done with the legs so that the arms are free. And turning is done almost exclusively with the legs. The arms are used for balance and for securing the man. And as mentioned before, we always want to avoid getting in trouble, keep our hips higher than the opponent's hips when he tries to fold either to the inside or the outside. Though the central location for both your hands is opponent's far shoulder area, it can be advantageous to pick up on his far ankle in order to shift weight onto his hands and stabilize him. If you do grab far ankle, then the forward free hand may stay in the far shoulder area or may be moved to several locations to help yourself in the evolving toward a pin grip. When you do have a grapevine in, you must know the counters to the grape so that you can pre-act or react there too. So it's very important, if you're going to use a leg grapevine, that you be in anticipation of the different possibilities if your opponent were going to counter-move you. The pin grips that come off a leg grapevine are several in number, and we shall not cover them right now here on film, but we will cover them another day